Massimo's too cool for the head bob. You were doing it until I looked, and then you were like, no.
As soon as you realized he was looking at you.
Yeah, you're like a cat. You do a thing, and someone's like, look at the cat do the thing. You're like,
oh yeah,
nah.
I'm the worst, honestly.
I wasn't doing that. Don't be ridiculous. Hey everybody. It's Saturday, May 15th. And it's, believe it or not, it's Disassembled. It's the podcast for the big Glass Cow comic page. I'm really trying with the name. It's hard. It's I either have to try to pronounce Glass Cow correctly, or I have to say BGCP, which is just
it's a mouthful itself. Yeah,
it's all I can't. Did you ever watch Gotham?
Yeah, GCPD. Okay.
Yeah, I just feel like Jim Gordon busking in being like, GCPD! Like, whoa, man. Whoa. Yeah. Anyways, I'm your host, Ian Lynn. And with us today is Massimo.
Hello, everybody.
And Bethany.
Hello.
And they're here to say words into a microphone, just like me. Today, we're going to talk about anti-heroes. We're going to talk about some news. We're going to say what we've been doing. And then Massimo's going to tell us about some Kickstarters. And then I'm going to be like, okay, we're done. And that's going to be a clean hour. You watch. It's going to be smooth. Hopefully, no one's going to eat a microphone.
I don't know, man. I'm pretty tempted.
That's some...
it looks tasty.
It does it, though? It's prickly.
It's not at all.
It's got that. You have the fluffy.
It's so
do you have
squishy.
The fluffy thing on it?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think that kind of sets my teeth on edge just feeling it. I'm like, ah.
It's not even just that. It's the little circle thing in front of it.
For the pop filter, yeah.
I sort of just want to.
So as we said, this will be a clean hour. There'll be no edits in this.
Nope.
We go on as we need to.
You're hearing it the way we say it.
Exactly.
Straight from the horse's mouth. So, this week we put out the call for people's favorite anti-heroes in comic books as our weekly topic of discussion. We got a couple of responses on Facebook. Now, just to clarify, the definition of an anti-hero, according to masterclass.com, is a central character who lacks the characteristics an audience associates with a conventional hero. They're usually morally ambiguous. They're complex characters with a dark side. I would say think, X, Y, and Z, but we're about to give some examples from Facebook. But basically, not Superman. I would actually say Batman is closer to an anti-hero than Superman, at least like some incarnations of him.
That's what I was always wondering, is that like when you think of definitions, and some of the ones that I came up with, which we'll get onto after we probably discuss some audience stuff, where I always think are heroes, but they kind of can be classed as anti-heroes, so I kind of went with that just so I could put them in.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely some that kind of straddle the line, especially just kind of depending on the interpretation that we're talking about. Again, Batman, for example, like you've got your Batmans that are more kind of, he's the weird creature of the night, but also he's, upstanding and heroic and doesn't do the bad. And then you've got Frank Miller, who I think is much more of an anti-hero.
Old dude with a bat tank and a bat suit and
you could arguably say that the entirety of the Ultimates in Ultimate Marvel are anti-heroes because they're all dicks.
Yeah.
Which kind of fits the bill. But you know what? Let's see what our adoring public on Facebook has to say about the matter.
Yep.
David Crana, author of the wonderful Glass City, and our first interview on the site, go back and see episode 1, says the first name that springs to mind is John Constantine. Yeah.
No
agreement.
Yeah, kind of a guy who, I think with Constantine or Constantine or however you want to say his name, because there's an argument wherever you go.
Yes, there is.
The thing with him is that people always want to say, like, John Constantine is not a good person. He never claimed to be a good person. And any interpretation of him that is then painted that way is really distrustful and kind of untrue to the character.
Mhm.
Because what makes him so good is that he is a normal dude with weirdly magical abilities and a long lifespan that gets into serious trouble, but always manages to kind of wiggle his way out of it.
At the expense usually of someone else.
By
Which
damning
that's-
someone to hell. Or
That's kind
deal
of
with the devil.
the thing that really makes him an anti-hero is like he'll beat the baddies, he'll drive the demons back to hell, but
For what cost?
probably going to be some casualties.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
That's the fun part of it.
Which isn't to say those things don't weigh on him. Like, he knows that he is not a good person. And large parts of his arc and his storylines have to do with him grappling with guilt from those situations, sending a little girl to hell accidentally, or creating a demon doppelganger of himself that almost assaults his niece, which is a big part of the latter, I don't know, like 50 issues, like the last 50 issues of the comic. But that's where you get the complex part of the character. Like, terrible things happen because of them, or they do terrible things, but they're not necessarily reveling in it.
Which then kind of presents the idea of the character of Constantine or Constantine, because I'm going to keep saying that to not offend anyone on the internet.
Offend them, it'll be fun.
I'm just going to
fine,
say
yeah.
Constantine. That's
Constantine. Yeah,
I said
exactly.
I really emphasize the Constantine just to really take the piss,
Yeah, exactly. As he would say. But no, Constantine is like one of those things that, as you said, he is like his actions do begin to weigh on him, which, unlike your Superman's or sometimes your Batman's interpretation, it's kind of because he was written by the same writer for so long, right, consistently across a long period. It kind of led to consequences being present rather than different writers swapping up each run. What's the big issue arc?
Yeah.
Well, it's just more interesting when they're more realistic because they acknowledge the fact that they're not doing everything right. The ones who are like, I've done everything correct, you cannot tell me I'm wrong. That's just boring.
Yeah. I mean, therein lies, I think, the kind of cultural fascination with anti-heroes. Because, I mean, let's face it, generally speaking, anti-heroes are more popular than just straight-up heroes. Batman is arguably more popular than Superman. People like Spider-Man, but like Venom is the real hotness, I think there's an inherent interest in seeing these characters that kind of explore and characterize our darker selves, but do it without going fully into that area of evil that we feel uncomfortable supporting. I mean, yes,
Well,
you've got
because-
people who really like the Joker, but like, you don't necessarily feel great about the Joker.
Well, the thing is, it's like with villains and then also with heroes, they're either too good or they're too bad. Like, no one can see themselves in that.
Right.
With anti-heroes, because it's that sort of ambiguous middle ground, it's easier for like you as a person to be like, oh, I understand that decision. Because when it's a good person, they're just going to do the right thing. If the bad person, they're going to do the bad thing.
Right.
When it's like in the middle, it's more relatable, and people are always trying to find something they relate to.
Yeah.
Well, there's a grey area to exist, which is the most positive thing. Because as you said, it's like the thing of like black and white, basically. Good is good and bad is bad, and there is no in between. And you're either a Joker or you're a Batman or you're a Superman or a Lex Luthor, and that was probably the norm for comics for a long period of time. And then with the introduction of characters who are anti-heroes or characters who are inherently flawed heroes, it allows like more room for the genre to breathe and grow. And like I feel like people do like hate the trope now, with your kind of your Deadpools or people consider Wolverine to be an anti-hero and stuff like that. People who they kill and they're gritty and all that stuff. But that isn't what makes an anti-hero an anti-hero. It's just people who make difficult decisions that don't always work out positively. Good intentions but bad outcomes kind of thing.
That actually brings up, since you brought up Deadpool, that brings up an interesting point that I was kind of thinking about last night when I was considering this topic. As far as killing, like defining an anti-hero is part of the definition of an anti-hero character that they do kill, or that they don't have a moral aversion to killing? Like, do they have to kill to be an anti-hero, or can you have an anti-hero character that still has that kind of no kill code?
I think you could still be an anti-hero character and like not kill, but it's the fact that they accept that sometimes to do the right thing you have to kill that sort of makes them an anti-hero.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
acceptance that you have to do bad things for good reasons sometimes.
It's not the Batman complex of, I cannot kill, it's my one real rule, but I can beat someone to a coma.
Right.
fine with
Comas
that.
are okay.
Comas are
But
fine,
not murder.
but not murder. We're good with comas, but we're not okay with murder. And then you're like, well,
Maybe
Okay.
Probably would have preferred to die.
okay sometimes. Maybe it's a
Sometimes.
sometimes thing.
and you see that if you look at characters' arc, like, okay, any normal person, if their sidekick was beaten to death with a crowbar by a murderous clown, would probably go off the rails
Right.
and maybe result in some sort of heavy action that would result in that person no longer being alive, or possibly maimed incredibly so they would never be able to walk again.
Yeah. I mean,
But Batman's like, no, he's the Joker. I mean, they retcon it in comics because technically it's diplomatic immunity, but like, come on.
yeah, I mean, well, that was their excuse
Out.
immediately,
Yeah.
you know, at the end of we're referring to the Joker paralyzing Barbara Gordon and
Yeah.
killing Jason Todd, by the way, for those
Yeah.
not keeping up. At the end of the last chapter of Death in the Family, yeah, I mean, the Joker becomes the diplomat for Iran, and that, you know, they can't take him in because diplomatic immunity. But that's only that comic. Like, for the rest of forever, it's that, oh, he has the, you know, the insanity plea, which is kind of like, well, okay, he's had the like, how many people has he killed, and we're still going with the insanity plea? At some point, someone's responsible. Like, okay, if we're going to go with the insanity plea, and that's why we can't, you know, put him to death, well, then someone needs to be held responsible for the fact that your facilities for the mentally ill are so reprehensibly useless that not only is he never treated and never shows any improvement, but he escapes on a whim.
And here within lies the problem, is that, okay, we could talk about the Joker, and we could talk about how DC made the decision, or sorry, the fans made the decision, because as we all know, that's definitely what the fans wanted, to kill off a Robin. That decision ultimately created one of the most iconic anti-heroes that DC currently has in its roster.
Oh yeah, people love the Red Hood.
Yeah, everyone loves the Red Hood. But people
Jason
forget
Todd
that he was
the most interesting, and some people would argue, I mean, you've got your Dick Grayson people, which I don't know. I mean, Dickolas Grayson, he's all right.
I mean, Tim Drake's the one that everyone forgets about.
Which is dumb, because Tim Drake is
The
the
world's greatest
smartest
detective.
Robin, arguably.
Yeah.
But Jason Todd is probably the most widely loved, not like member of the Bat family who is not Bruce himself.
Yeah.
Because he's interesting. I mean, Judd Winnick brought him back with Under the Hood, which became Under the Red Hood after the movie came out. They actually renamed the comic to fit the movie. And I mean, when you think about it, he's been around for a while. They brought him back in 2005, I think. So, I mean, at this point, Jason has been the Red Hood for longer than he was ever Robin. In fact, let's see here. Jason Todd introduction. Let's see. What year did Jason become Robin? Jason debuted in 1983. I think he was killed in 1986 or 87 or 88. It was late 80s.
Definitely short of the time he's been written, though. Like, that's the thing.
Yeah, he was only Robin for 5 or 6 years. 88. I knew it had to be like 87 or 88 because it was post-crisis. So he was only Robin for like 5 years. He's been the Red Hood for like 15.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that really defines his characters these days. And then you've got, you know, some really intriguing storylines with him, like the introduction in Under the Red Hood. His initial New 52 run with Scott Lobdell was controversial. There were some good points and some bad. But the Red Hood and the Outlaws run in Rebirth was really good with him, Artemis, and Bizarro. Like,
Yep.
legitimate, at least for the first, say, 30 issues, legitimately really good run because
I
of
think I
that
read
complexity.
the first 10 or so of that. And I remember being really good, but obviously being young and not having a concept of the cost of comics. Being able to, spend $5 on a comic, monthly or weekly was not one of those things that you think about. Now you think, oh, how much money I've spent on it. But
Oh, that's right. You were like 15.
oh yeah, I was young. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people always forget. But no, like even people in the Facebook comments here with I think it's Ross Slavin says like with he's got a list here of anti-heroes, and he mentions kind of Blade, he mentions Red Hood, and he mentions the Man with No Name, which obviously outside of comics is Clint Eastwood's character in the Fistful of Dollars or the Few Dollars More, and also the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly trilogy.
Which Clint Eastwood, generally characters Clint Eastwood plays, period, are great anti-hero examples.
Yeah, Dirty Harry and stuff like that. But like the fact, everyone will tend to agree that stuff like Red Hood, who we've spent a considerable amount of time on already, are these kind of quintessential anti-heroes. But along with that, and there's people here who have, I think it's Paul Glasswell says Judge Dredd as an anti-hero.
Yeah.
I'm conflicted on that one. Because I know Judge Dredd is an anti-hero in the sense, oh yeah, he kills stuff, but he's an embodiment of justice and the law. Nothing he does is technically breaking the laws of the city he's in. Right? Like, or in some depictions anyway.
Do you have to break the law to be an anti-hero?
Right, so I think that gets more into an anti-hero. Does that also kind of come down to the personality and the characteristics of that? Even if they're not breaking the law, well, that's fine, but there's still a complexity to that. It's just what they are and how they operate is, instead of being fueled by one source, is fueled by, okay, well, this is how the law works in this world. Now, what that can lead to is there's not really a juxtaposition of a heroic character to pit them against. Like, they are that's his thing, right? I am the law.
Yeah. I am the law.
I am the law.
That's more Batman, but yeah, it's Stallone, man. Jesus.
So, are they still an anti-hero if they don't have that kind of lighter side to compare them to? I think so. I think they still, on a conceptual level, I think they still kind of check those boxes as far as what people find interesting in anti-heroes. And let's be honest, sometimes what people find interesting in anti-heroes is this guy's going to growl his way through a situation, threaten people, and get shit done.
Speaking of someone who does that, we have another suggestion here.
Is it Punisher?
Of the Punisher, yeah.
Punisher?
Yeah. Rich Young has Punisher. The script you gave pretty much sums up Frank Castle in pretty much all of his forms.
Yes. In fact, I think that
a Punisher. So about that segue.
Yeah.
I think a Punisher Judge Dredd crossover would be really interesting because they're basically the same character.
Yeah. The whole thing would be they swap helmets and you'd see
I would love to see a Punisherized version of the Judge Dredd armor, just with a fat skull on the chest.
Oh man, yeah.
Or the skull could be on the helmet. That would be pretty cool.
I feel like that probably exists if you look for it.
I'm sure it does.
Oh yeah, 100% does. But to make it canon would be great. But
yeah,
2000 AD and stuff like that. Who knows how they're doing with Marvel, how their relationship with Marvel is.
Yeah, I think all the 2000 AD crossovers have always been with DC, so I don't know.
Yeah, because I have the first one with Batman.
Yeah.
It's like him. It's like when the kind of Joker and Judge Death and all that stuff, and although that kind of run and stuff. I have that, but yeah, I feel like obviously two cool anti-heroes being Judge Dredd and Punisher. It would be interesting to see them interact, but probably would never happen in the next lifetime or so, because who knows what the state of comics is and crossovers.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
The Punisher, I talked about this a little bit last week. The other thing that's difficult about the Punisher, and honestly most anti-heroes, and it's something we can kind of divorce ourselves from reading comics, is how much these characters kind of wouldn't be acceptable in real life. In a comic, so the Punisher, right? He's gonna Frank Castle is going to kill the bad guys. He is maybe the most anti-hero along with Judge Dredd, in that some anti-heroes, they kind of skirt the lighter side of the gray line where they're not trying to kill people, but they will if they have to, right? Castle's going to kill people. Like, that's his thing. There is no not killing the bad guy, which is why you don't really have like a large staple of Punisher having a rogues gallery, aside from Jigsaw, really.
No, they're all dead.
Yeah, he kills them.
But isn't that like a good thing?
For some of the
in
some
a
of the
comic,
villains,
yes. Because in a fictional
In
story,
real
the
life.
bad guy is the bad guy no matter what. But if we had some maniac just taking the law into his own hands and shooting the people that he perceives as bad guys dead in real life, well, people make mistakes. That's what that's the argument a lot of people have against a death penalty, is look how many people over time have been wrongfully convicted of crimes because evidence was messed up, because DNA evidence came out wrong. And, you find out, there are people that 30 years later, they're released because it's like, oh, nope, we screwed up. Or worse, people that are put to death. And then later you find out, oh, that was the wrong guy. So there's these morally ambiguous heroes get to kind of be unambiguous in comics. They are always gonna kill the bad guy, and it is always the bad guy. Whereas if you had that sort of presence in real life, it would be terrifying, and it would be like, who gave this guy?
He would become the bad guy in real life very quickly.
Well, he'd be a psychopathic vigilante that goes about and literally murders people. And the issue is that because a lot of times when Francis does it, he's the criminals, there isn't evidence on them, hence why they probably haven't been caught at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Which results in, oh, this guy's murdering just random people. Like that's the issue, is that obviously, I think there was a panel that was sent into the group chat because we have a podcast group because we're very professional.
Professionals.
Very professional. This is the thing about, Frank Castle catching a predator.
Right.
Child predator. But how would you be able to prove that after he's murdered them? Because that's what he does. He's going to kill them or maim them or whatever, because he's castrate them because he's Frank Castle. What is the repercussions for that? Is it just going to go on the news and go, okay, this guy was this, but because we can't actually prove it, what happens then? Yeah. I guess it's the broader ramifications of an action.
Trust the word of the guy murdering people.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, exactly.
He knows what he's doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it gets real complicated. Now, that kind of leads to another anti-hero example that sort of deals with that idea. Dexter. Sociopathic serial killer, only kills other killers. And the way they kind of deal with that is he's a blood spatter analyst. He works in the Miami Police Department. So he has access to criminal cases and evidence and all that. And at least when the character was initially introduced, he really only went after people that escaped the law. So if someone was taken in for a crime and they were not convicted for whatever reason, even though the evidence all pointed to it, like, let's say, there was a mistrial, or the jury was just stupid, or someone got paid off. Yeah. That's the point. Only once the law has failed does he kind of take things into his own hands and, wrap those people up in plastic on a table and put a knife in their chest. They do kind of stray away. Dexter's a really good 4 seasons. Don't watch the rest of them.
He's coming back, man.
Yeah, with the showrunners that ran the first 4 seasons, so I'll watch that.
So it should get better.
Yeah, hopefully. But at least the initial outset of that character, that's kind of how they dealt with that, is he didn't just take the law into his own hands willy-nilly. First of all, that would be exhausting. Especially because as the Dexter show and books would have you believe it, there's 1 billion people murdered in Miami every night. I have no idea what the actual murder rate in Miami is, so maybe it is bad. I don't know. But he only went after people that escaped the law. And so there was kind of a preponderance of evidence that kind of pointed to that person being guilty. But it's like that's still a real, dodgy area, because that really is still him taking the judgment into his own hands, which is, I mean, that's where you get into the Batman thing, where he doesn't kill because he's like, well, I'm not the I can be, judge and jury and taking someone in, but I'm not going to be the executioner.
I guess that then presents the issue of, and I guess this is another weird one, is the idea of like reformed villains or reformed characters who have villainous past and villainous actions or have committed crimes, but then decide to go hero.
You mean like, they decide to be a lethal protector?
Yes, they do.
Were we going about Venom?
Yeah, you're talking about Venom. I'm waiting for you to. Yeah. Segues for days here.
You can keep going. I was just.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, like Venom.
Venom.
Oh my god.
Later, more.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. No, he's one of the ones that we can mention it when everyone comes to the anti-heroes. Venom's a weird one because Venom is, as we discovered through decades worth of comics canon, is that it only enhances the aspects of people.
Mm-hmm.
So with Eddie Brock, Venom is definitely, it's a villain or kind of anti-hero. But then when you go to Flash Thompson, the villain is a hero. Like, and even if you stretch out into further Marvel stuff, you've got Wolverine, brainwashed for a lot of the time, but then still was a mercenary for hire and still killed people, but is part of the X-Men and is considered to be a hero because he has a conscience. Right. Only kills the bad guys kind of thing. Or whenever he did kill innocents, he kind of...
He is the best at what he does. And what he does isn't very nice.
Exactly. And then you can obviously lump in, Winter Soldier that as well, being a brainwashed pawn for the USSR, assassinating people, right?
I think he sort of skipped over the anti-hero stage, though, at least in the movies and stuff. Like, he went just from villain to, he is now hero. You have no choice.
But in the comics,
the comics, there's a little bit more of a gray area there.
Yeah.
I think he's still, up until the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think he still did kind of sit on that anti-hero line. He very much was a Jason Todd type of character. He wasn't necessarily out for blood, but he was willing to shoot someone. And he did have that kind of moral complexity to him. He was grappling with the guilt of what he did as a brainwashed killing machine. And he is willing to ally himself with people like Zemo. So that is definitely that morally ambiguous anti-hero quality. Now, we definitely do see him kind of step into the light at the end of Falcon versus Winter Soldier. But I think that Bucky definitely kind of fills in that anti-hero space in a lot of ways.
I would say so. And I feel like if we're talking about kind of those kind of characters that fill the space as such, I mean, I kind of mentioned it earlier on, but you've got to include in that situation, you've probably got to include Blade.
Yeah.
Because inherently vampire killer.
Yeah,
but
he's gonna kill. Like, that's his thing. But he's killing vampires, which I think that's that can still get dicey, because are all vampires evil?
Exactly. Are all vampires inherently evil, or are they just a kind of matter design kind of thing? And I mean, I can't think off the top of my head of any vampires in the Marvel comics that are good characters. They always portray them as bad.
There's been a couple. Not many.
Yeah. It's a shame though, isn't it? Like, I feel like having characters who are like that, who have those conflicted models that are considered to be, traditional monsters, be it vampire or, lycanthropy or whatever the MCU decides to do. Because Jubilee's lycanthrope now, right? Or was.
For a minute. I mean, Captain America was a werewolf for a minute. Stuff got weird.
Was, yeah. We always forget about these little corners of the Marvel universe that kind of get pavement over with every reboot or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's the issue, is that characters like, you can obviously make the clarification for both Punisher and Blade, or even probably those two specifically, like, they are eliminating threats to human beings in general, which means technically they're not anti-heroes, they're just heroes spot on.
Right.
Because to some people, a guy who kills a bunch of murderers, even though he's murdering them for good reason. So it's like, it has its own set of moral issues that come with it. Right?
Hence the ambiguous gray area.
Right, and I think that comes down to like, what are you willing to accept, morally speaking?
Exactly. Yeah.
As a person. I mean, that's another, like, again, there's so many different interpretations of Batman. There's the vampire Batman trilogy. Starting with Red Rain, where Batman becomes a vampire and he's killing vampires, and he definitely, I mean, by the third book of that series, Batman has to die. Like, he is a bloodthirsty vampire. He has crossed the line too far in one direction, which is, I think that's the other thing that fascinates us about antiheroes, is there is constantly, the hero, what they're going to do. Like, Superman's going to save the day, or at least he's going to try, right? Like, he's not going to, Superman's not about to, as traditional Superman, we're not talking about Injustice, we're not talking about Man of Steel. Superman's not going to pop Lex Luthor's head off, like, you're not going to have a story where Lex goes too far and Superman rips his friggin' spine out, as cool as that would be to see. Versus an anti-hero, you can kind of play, as the writer, you can kind of play with that wavering line of, are they going to go too far? Are we gonna take them into a little romp as a villain? Are they gonna tread into bad guy territory, which is a bit more intriguing, I think.
Well, I think definitely. Sorry, I was checking out other kind of lists and stuff of other heroes that we have from the Facebook comments, just to kind of make sure everyone feels involved. But no, like, definitely, like, it's the line that people draw on. Like, one of the things that Ian, I don't know if that was you or if it was other, I assume it's Bossman Ian, said was the idea of, like, Tyler Durden being an anti-hero.
Yes.
From Fight Club.
That's a difficult one, because is he really, or is he the villain in that story?
Or a terrorist event. Or you can even make the argument, I know everyone says it, Rorschach.
Yes, Benjamin Milne brought up Rorschach in the Facebook comments with a nice, cool animated GIF of Rorschach's mask doing a thingy thing.
Which has been staring at me since the beginning of this podcast, and it's really unsettling.
I mean, he's doing his job.
Just out the corner of my eye, I just keep seeing it going.
Yeah. I think Rorschach is one of the more misunderstood. I mean, one of the more misunderstood anti-heroes, because he's really, like, if you get right down to it, there's not that much to root for in Rorschach. He's almost only not a villain because he only goes after criminals. But he's not really a good person in any sense of the word. The reason, the thing with Rorschach is he is uncompromising. Like,
also unhinged. So.
Yes.
Only slightly.
He does not see himself in a moral gray area at all. To him, everything is black and white, hence the mask. Like, that's what that represents. Yeah. So it's interesting in that most anti-heroes, I think, embrace the idea of the moral ambiguity. They will argue for the fact that sometimes there is a gray area. That's kind of what, characters like Jason Todd and Dexter and characters like that do. Whereas I think Rorschach actually is in the same category as, like, a Frank Castle or a Judge Dredd, in that he's an anti-hero because he doesn't see that gray, because he does only see in black and white and sees himself falling starkly into the white, with anyone who is a villain falling starkly into the black and must be killed. So I think that's another gradient of the anti-hero concept, is, like, do they know that they're sort of in a middle ground? Do they know that they're kind of walking a line there, or do they see themselves as the hero no matter what?
I think a lot of the people we're talking about as well are, I know this is kind of, like, obviously there's the exceptions, but there's a lot of them are just normal human beings a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Or people who are slightly enhanced in some way. If we're talking about, like, kind of broader anti-heroes that exist, you're talking, like, you count the Spectre as being an anti-hero because it's the judgment of God? Is that someone who's anti-hero, the anti-hero adjacent kind of thing? Or, like,
that's complicated, because it's like, well, if he's an anti-hero, what's that say about God?
or like whenever the spectacle, or like, you know, characters like video games like Kratos, who is only killing things because his family, because he's a Spartan, he's a warrior, and then a god tricked him into killing his family, and that's the reason why he's in his way. You know, not an inherently bad
I think
character.
the conclusion there is
stuff.
that we can apparently just blame the gods.
Yeah, clearly, right? Just any depiction.
The Greeks had the right idea.
Exactly, but that's what I mean. Is like characters like that who are like so heavily like associated with maybe kind of cosmic powers. Are they considered to be anti-heroes as well?
Well, I think that's, if you step outside of what's kind of become traditional Western religion in the modern era, well, really for the past 2,000 years. I mean, if you look back at Egyptian mythology, Roman mythology, Greek mythology, the gods were pretty messed up. The gods really were just like normal, flawed people with cosmic power.
Yeah.
I mean, Zeus was a real son of a bitch.
Oh,
I don't think we have enough time in this hour little package to unpack all of the issues.
I believe we're almost at 40 minutes with the anti-hero talk.
Really?
I don't think we've got time to get the gods into this.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we are. Okay.
That's going to be a separate podcast, man.
Just the worst.
Just that we analyze Zeus's entire family tree.
Anti-heroes are interesting. All right. Quick take. What's your favorite anti-hero?
Mine personally is Wolverine.
Wolverine?
I consider him to be an anti-hero because, as you say, he's what he does. He's best at what he does. What he does is very nice.
I think traditionally he's more of an anti-hero than anything else. I think I actually do have to go. I'm kind of torn. I have to go with either Jason Todd or Constantine. I love both those characters. I think they're interesting. I haven't read many stories with them that I don't enjoy. It's really hard to find a bad Red Hood or a bad John Constantine story.
Based on the Facebook comments, I'm agreeing with Gary Kane and saying Drop Dead Fred is obviously the best anti-hero.
Yeah. I saw that was in there. I was like, okay, Bethany will be happy. I'm going to mention Drop Dead Fred.
We'll just slide that in there. I'm going to force you to watch that at some point, man.
It counts.
It does.
It works.
Well, I'll tell you what. Speaking of anti-heroes, Venom 2, or Venom Let There Be Carnage. We're doing news now, by the way, folks. Listen.
This section is called Making Headlines.
Straight from the headlines. Headlines. The Venom sequel trailer dropped. Let There Be Carnage, which will follow up the post-credits teaser at the end of the first Venom movie, where we saw Woody Harrelson in a hilariously unfortunate wig.
Oh my god, it's so bad.
How do you feel about that trailer?
Oh man, my issue, okay, the trailer looks okay, but my issue was the poster that came out.
The poster
looks like someone made it in Photoshop.
Yeah. My passion is graphic design.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen the original comic from where it's from. I've seen the image, the reference image, and $1 million studio being able to produce a poster from.
They should have just used the reference image.
You should have just used the reference image.
Yeah.
Slap it on.
Like, it's cool that they did the reference. That's fine. But, like, sometimes a direct reference isn't necessarily what you want to do.
It's good if you do it good.
Yeah.
Just do it right.
Well said.
It's good if you do it good.
If you do it good.
Yeah, t-shirt. That's the first
good
podcast t-shirt.
That'll be our first BGCP Disassembled t-shirt. It's good if you do it good.
The thing is that, like, the trailer itself, I thought it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of funny because when we're talking about the idea of, like, anti-heroes and Venom coming up and stuff like that, this is not a Venom that feels like an anti-hero. This is a Venom that feels like it's like a schmuck. Like, it's like, because he's attached to an Eddie Brock that's a blubbering...
It's the odd couple. That's what they're doing. In the beginning of the trailer, like, Venom making breakfast and Eddie's just kind of like, here we go.
Have some eggs, Eddie. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
please never do that voice again.
It's not great.
I say either. You say either.
You say either. It sounds like Cookie Monster.
Either.
Yeah. That's the trailer, and it sounds like a Cookie Monster. That's like,
I mean, it's so here's the thing, like Tom Hardy likes to do voices, right? And it was like,
yeah,
oh, Venom, he's not like doing a Bane voice or like, no, that's him. He does Venom's voice in the movie. Like that's the Tom Hardy doing a funny voice. I don't know what it is
just
about him, but he's always got to do a funny voice.
like I think I've warmed up to Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy's Carnage, right? I've warmed up to it, but the him with hair is still disconcerting.
It is weird because Woody Harrelson's been bald for so long.
Yeah.
But I'm glad they gave him. I mean, it's still cartoonishly red, but I'm glad it doesn't look like some friggin' clown shoes, Ronald McDonald ass, like
Yeah.
friggin' Raggedy Ann. Like
Mop.
that was
Archie
so,
Andrews.
they should go back and recut
Like CGI,
the end
yeah.
of Venom with him with that hair. It's significantly better.
I mean,
I like
think,
what I see in the trailer though. I mean, we got a
Yeah.
couple of things there. We're kind of seeing where the relationship between Eddie and Venom has evolved to. We've got the shopkeeper, Mrs. Chang, greeting both of them, so we can see that people are aware that Venom exists,
Yeah.
right? Which is interesting because we see a lot more of Venom and Eddie as separate entities in this than I think is traditionally how it goes.
I think, yeah, I feel like the thing is with normal Venom is it's always like, it's like Eddie Brock is like the Met kind of thing almost.
Mhm.
Like it's like he's piloting the symbiote, and the symbiote and him are one and the same. But this thing is like whenever he has the Venom symbiote, it literally takes him over.
Yeah.
There is no duality. It's like a split personality thing, which I think is a cool idea and kind of works, but also takes away from the point of Venom that makes Venom so cool, is the fact that he takes on the attributes of whoever is wearing him.
Mhm.
Right. I think it works for what this is. I mean, they really did
Yeah.
kind of establish, like, this is different than Venom in the comics. I mean, the first movie not having that Spider-Man origin, kind of hinting to, they sort of hint towards the planet of the symbiotes, and the fact that the symbiotes do have kind of minds of their own is all established in that first movie. So we've already got kind of a different way that the symbiotes work as opposed to how they work in the comics. So I'm fine. I mean, I liked the first Venom. I didn't think I'd like it at all, but it was kind of that, like, it felt like an early 2000s superhero movie before we had the MCU and all that. Like, just kind of standing by itself and sort of schlocky and entertaining.
Yeah. Having something that's disconnected from a wider series of movies is something very unique almost nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see
watchable.
We'll see if it hooks up with more.
The important part.
Like
it looks
watchable.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was. I'm not saying it was like a piece of cinema art, but it was entertaining. Tom Hardy felt like he was in a different movie than everyone else in that movie.
I feel like that is the issue, though, is that not every film you go to the cinema to see has to be this big magnum opus, like cinematic masterpiece. Like sometimes movies can just be fun, schlocky, weird things about a guy who has a black suit that's sentient.
Yeah. I mean, in the first movie, I think him getting into that lobster tank was improv, if I remember correctly. Like, Tom Hardy goes for it, man. I respect that. We got to see, I think the thing that surprised me the most in this trailer is we did actually get to see Carnage. I thought they were going to maybe hold off on that a bit.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, because I like the fact it's pretty much comic accurate. They gave him the arms and everything. Like, they didn't stray away from the fact that Carnage is supposed to have this weird kind of almost, I don't even know what to call it. It's otherworldly appearance.
He's very liquidy. He's supposed to be.
Viscous.
He exists in Cletus Cassidy's bloodstream.
Yeah.
He was, when they designed him, he basically was designed as one of the concepts that Venom was going to be, which is to make him more of a moving, sort of undulating creature. So I wish there was more of that, but we only saw him for a second, so no judgment yet. There are hints that we might get Toxin, who is a symbiote that bonds with a police officer and is kind of an anti-Spider-Man even more than Venom. The one thing that everyone was kind of freaking out about in the trailer is everyone thought that a brief shot of the Daily Bugle mentioned the Avengers. No. A lot of people analyze that, and if you look at the font, it's really clear that it says Passengers something nightmare, not Avengers. So
this is the thing as well, is that like the Daily Bugle has now had 3 separate appearances and 3 separate properties that involve Spider-Man stuff.
Mhm.
And at the Spider-Verse, Daily Bugle's present. Obviously, end of Far From Home, Daily Bugle's there. And Venom, this trailer, Daily Bugle's also there. Are we looking at the Daily Bugle cinematic universe?
And there's the original Raimi films. Let's not forget
Obviously,
those.
the Raimi films as well, yeah.
Into the
I think
Bugle.
that was just people getting too excited about the idea of it being linked somehow. Not everything has to be linked.
No. The reason people are doing that is because the Daily Bugle logo on that paper is the same as the Daily Bugle from the Raimi films, but that might have just been reusing assets. Or maybe someone was like, it's a good design, let's use it.
Yeah. It's a weird one though. Like I'm excited for it, but I'll probably watch it.
We'll watch it.
We'll watch it.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'll watch it. Like I don't really have, like, after the fact we've not had basic superheroes for like almost 2 years. 2 years almost. I feel like I'll take anything at this point.
We'll watch them
right?
I'll yeah, I'm an addict. I'm
ready.
I need my head.
I didn't see Venom in theaters. I'll probably see this in theaters. I'm vaccinated. Come at me, world. Let's do this. So yeah, I mean, go watch the trailer if you haven't yet. It doesn't show a lot. Obviously, it's just the first trailer, and I mean, really, I don't like when trailers give away a whole movie.
It'll be interesting to see Andy Serkis as a director in this, and how he will have his approach, because obviously known to be Gollum and Ulysses Claw and Marvel. It's interesting to see what he'll be like as a director, and if this might be the start of a long and illustrious career as a proper director in Hollywood, and not just the guy who did that CG monster.
Yeah.
The guy who did the thing for the thing.
For the thing. That's another t-shirt coming.
We do have a couple of, obviously Venom is completely disconnected from the MCU as far as we know. There's been nothing yet that makes it so they couldn't swoop in and be like, well, he's in San Francisco. All this has been going on in New York this whole time. But I don't think they will.
Nah. So Sony are trying to keep what they have left of their failing cinematic universe that they've properties have.
However, there is some MCU news this week. 2 major pieces. One is a refutation of a rumor, and the other is a rumor itself. The first, I'll mention the rumor itself really quick, and I'll let you guys take the refutation of a rumor, a long-standing rumor of some casting.
Yeah.
The rumor that came out recently is there are some rumblings that the villain for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, or just Black Panther 2, is going to be Namor.
Ooh. I don't know.
That would be interesting, and it would make sense. Because Namor, speaking of anti-heroes...
Just for those who are uninitiated as to who Namor is.
So Namor is the Aquaman of Marvel, except for way more of a jerk.
Yeah.
He sometimes allies with the Avengers, but usually he is only concerned with protecting his kingdom, which is underwater. But
Atlantis, right? It is.
There are also other times where he very much has a view of like, the whole world is my kingdom. Like, yeah, the water is here, but like, you're all kind of on my land. If I remember correctly, though, he's not actually an Atlantean. He's a mutant. It's just he's accepted by the Atlanteans as their king.
Or is he a mutate? Because those are different things in the MCU.
I think actually, in the MCU, I guess we'll see. In comics, though, I believe he is a mutant.
Yeah.
It's revealed.
I mean, people have been saying that Namor is going to appear and stuff since, obviously, the Marvel bought the Fox, and that was one of the things that got caught, and the thing that a lot of people kind of went under the radar, because sea puns.
But the people want it.
Yeah, well, obviously they made references. There was stuff. What was it? There was like underwater earthquakes off the coast of whatever.
Yes, they mentioned that in Endgame.
And people immediately speculated that. Bang, that's Namor. That has to be him because you know, in the
Or
middle
at least
of this,
related to him.
yeah, or at least related to him and his experiences. Like in the comics, Namor has a very hit or miss relationship with characters like Captain America and like the original. Was the Defenders, I believe, like Captain America, the original Human Torch, all that
The
stuff.
original Human Torch was an android, Captain America, and Namor back in the 40s.
What you want?
This is I'll show you this. It was Pop Vinyl. It came out
Way
from
back in the day.
Yeah, this guy.
I don't like its lack of a face.
Well, that's what it's an android. Also appeared in Alec Ross and illustrated comic Marvels.
Today we learned that Bethany is a robot racist.
Exactly. When they come for us, you first.
I feel like I'll be dead before they get here.
Possible.
Self-inflicted or
so
just highly likely.
Yeah.
With Namor being introduced also works because Namor is constantly at odds with Reed Richards. And has a serious thing for Sue Storm, the Invisible Woman.
Speaking of Sue Storm.
Speaking of Sue Storm, thank you for picking up on that cue.
Wow.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the other piece of kind of MCU news that came out.
MC News.
Just gonna lose it at the end. Was the fact that Emily Blunt
just will not be doing a superhero movie.
She's completely against it. She's refuted the claims that she has been in contact with Marvel for Sue Storm, and even obviously going to mention the fact that she wants nothing to do with superhero films. I believe. Do you want to pull up the?
You want to see information?
Yeah. She says she doesn't believe in superhero movies. I believe is what she said.
It was.
Yeah. I think it's a fan casting. No one received the phone call. That's just people saying it. She did say, wouldn't that be great? So I think she's not.
She basically said that she doesn't think superhero movies are her thing.
But she said she wouldn't mind doing it, I believe. So, like, she isn't against it, but at the same time, she's not in any rush to go pick up a role.
She just wants to do The Quiet Place.
Yeah, for ad infinitum. Because we were talking about this earlier. You obviously mentioned, Ian, that she's not a fan of. She doesn't want to make the second Edge of Tomorrow. Is Edge of Tomorrow what it's called?
I don't think it's not that she doesn't want to make it. She just thinks it would be too expensive, and so she doesn't think it'll get made. I
mean, I enjoyed that film. It was a really sleeper kind of hit thing. It was called Live, Die, Repeat over here, I think, or it was Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, it had a different name.
Whatever it was. Yeah. But yeah, no, like those, like it's weird to see someone completely flat out refute something like wanting to be in the MCU because you see so many actors now, almost like not all actors, but so many being like wanting a piece of the pie basically
because they realize what it could do for them.
Mm-hmm. And as we kind of mentioned, as mentioned in the article here, is that Emily Blunt was originally in contention for Black Widow, but turned the role down to star in the amazingly fantastic Gulliver's Travel film with Jack Black, because that was such a smash hit success.
Oscar worthy, really.
Oscar, completely snubbed at the Academy. Like it's a weird one. I mean, I
respect her honesty.
The thing is, though, is that she could easily be lying, which probably not the case. But if she was cast, Marvel would definitely not want her to reveal anything.
Right. But if she was cast, she would just be staying silent. I don't think she would have said no to the rumors.
I don't know, because obviously we had that stuff coming about Andrew Garfield saying that he never got the phone call for Spider-Man.
Right.
But
and we'll see.
Some of the stuff, again, it could be rabid fan rumors, but we don't really know.
Well, it's good to know that Emily Blunt is too good for superhero movies. I would say her opinion on superhero movies is awfully blunt.
Whoa.
Please edit that out.
This is that pun central here.
Another piece of news that I want to bring up, just because it's so ridiculous, and it's only kind of ancillarily related, tangentially related to comic books and nerd stuff. Target here in the US has stopped selling and stocking any sort of trading card for the foreseeable future. That's Pokemon, sports, Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not going to be there. The reason for that is because for some reason, through the pandemic, with people having disposable incomes and nothing to do, Pokemon cards have had such a resurgence that adult human beings are fighting each other in parking lots over them. There were some altercations where employees in Target were almost assaulted. There was a situation where there was 4 men who jumped another guy in a parking lot trying to get his Pokemon cards, and he pulled a gun on them in self-defense. Understandable.
Man, use gun.
And so Target's like, no, we're not, no, for the safety of our employees.
The fact that you have to stop selling something for the safety of your employees, and like it's not like it's like, oh, we just stopped selling guns for the safety of our employees. We have to stop selling Pokemon cards.
There we go. This is the thing, and it's something that's like, I mean, people are just going to go to specialized game shops now, and it's going to be worse there. But
God help my local comic book store.
Or game store, comic book store. It's going to be terrible for you guys over there, whatever's happening. It just, like, I understand that people, taking it, they want to be the very best to the next level.
Like no one ever was.
Like no one ever was. But I don't think that should involve the assault of people over pieces of cardboard / plastic or whatever the Pokemon cards are printed on.
You could just said cards.
I know, I probably should have said that because they are cards. But look, America's a weird place. Not to offend you, Ian.
No, America's a weird place.
Yeah, but I guess it's positive because it means no one's going to get assaulted anymore.
No one's going to get assaulted in Target parking lots, at least. No word from Walmart yet. So.
Oh God, yeah, it's even worse there.
We'll see.
But yeah, it's great. We love this shit. We love it.
I just wanted to bring it up because it's so ridiculous. Like grown adult human beings fighting each other over some pieces of cardboard with cute monsters on them. What are we become?
If anyone understands how that has happened, please let us know.
Oh my God.
Please tell us how this works.
If you had an experience where you've been accosted for Pokemon cards, please drop us a line on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, BGCP, Comic Con, Big Glasgow Comic Page.com.
Yes.
Leave a like, subscribe.
All those things, please.
Do you like listening to us talk out of our ass for an hour? Do you leave a thumbs up?
Speaking of our time slot, we are coming swiftly close to that if we haven't already passed that. And as we kind of covered most of the news for this very dry news week,
it has been pretty dry.
I would like to talk about something that is a segment that I came up with probably several hours ago before we came on this podcast.
We plan meticulously for these shows.
Yes, we are consummate amateurs. I'm
never not thinking about it.
Exactly. It's always on my mind. I'm always ruining the day when I can be cut free of my chain at this podcast. No, deal with the double. Anyway, sorry. So, this new segment is called Kickstarter Corner.
That's Corner with a K.
Corner with a K.
Yeah, because we are
like
so cool and edgy here. Like Mortal Kombat.
We're cool and edgy.
Cool and edgy.
Cool with a K.
Yeah, no,
not
this week
cool
on
Kickstarter Corner with a K with all Ks. That's bad. No, we don't do that.
Exactly. No.
Oh dear.
God, no. Look, it's Kickstarter Corner. I left the other K out. It's fine. Anyway, so on this week's Kickstarter Corner, we will be talking about Alex Automatic, which is a Kickstarter that has funded, and I believe from the date of this podcast, which is the 15th, I believe there is still 2 weeks left for you guys to fund this wonderful comic that is basically a psychedelic trip of a secret agent who's been brainwashed to believe he's a 70s super spy. It's like a weird mixture with kind of Winter Soldier and kind of other kind of spy shows of the 70s and kind of a modern thing. And it's great. And it's by a Scottish author who we have an interview with on the YouTube channel, Spotify, and website for the podcast. Called Fraser Campbell, and he's a very nice guy, and he explains about his process on Kickstarter and exactly what this book is about, and if this is the end of the character with this kind of first volume. Spoilers, it's not. We also have an upcoming interview that will be releasing probably conjoint with this or a few days afterwards that we did with Mark Abnett, who has a Kickstarter called This Land Issues 1 and 2, It is technically the Kickstarter for issue 2, but issue 1 is available as an add-on. And as we kind of talk about in the podcast, he has already completed the first 5 issues, which is very unusual for a Kickstarter thing. He's already like paid out of pocket for all, but all he has to do is like fund it so he can get the postage and the lettering and stuff done for it, and like the coloring and stuff. But like I've actually seen the other 3 issues that have been kind of produced. I've seen them in black and white, so it's colors are done, and with his own lettering, which he says he describes as himself as terrible, but it's not. It's pretty good. But it's like a mixture between like Moana, X-Men, and kind of like other kind of mystical fantasy properties, because it's based on the kind of the history of the Maori people and their kind of deities and other things like that, and how it's set in kind of future New Zealand, and kind of how these gods and how these kind of, they're not really myths in Maori, they're called their history, how their history is very true and real, and what happens when that kind of comes to light. And it's very interesting and very good. And I think it will be finished by the time this comes out, but you should go to their website for the comic, which I believe is like...
Is that the one you supported?
That's the one I've supported.
That's the one I very eagerly supported.
I've supported both of these Kickstarter ones. You can find it on Mark's comic website, which I believe is like it's Ahura, I think it's called, or it's we'll
put some links
we'll put
somewhere.
some links to it. It's fine. I'm terrible with pronunciations, but yeah, no, that is, you'll be able to buy the first 2 issues probably now available, and they're very good and they're really enjoyable, and I personally think that it's worth a check out. Both of them are worth a check out.
There we go. I mean, those sound good. And of course, you can check out those interviews as well. I want to give a shout out Kickstarter wise. I mentioned David Crana earlier with Glass City. As I understand it, he is currently in the process of working on volume 2 of Glass City. So definitely go give that a check out as well and support his work. Great dude. First guy we interviewed on the podcast. Talked about WandaVision with him way back in February, I think.
Must have been.
So, go check that out as well. Look at all 3 of those Kickstarters. Support. It's cool to support these smaller creators who are kickstarting comics. I think, the big, I wouldn't even say the big 2. I mean, Image is pretty big at this point. Boom is decently big. Those big publishers are going to be fine. I would say, I mean, the heart and soul of the creative side of the comic book industry right now is, these Kickstarter projects, these indie projects. So if you like comic books, if you like the medium, it's always good to go support those and make sure those creators kind of get their due.
I think there's a lot of stuff out there that is underappreciated and underrepresented, and I feel like the Kickstarters we've talked about are giving new life and kind of new interesting aspects on kind of tired tropes.
Yeah.
And if you have a Kickstarter, about Kickstarter you want us to give a shout out to, let us know. We're always happy to check them out. We like doing interviews with little creators, smaller creators. I feel like little sounds condescending. Smaller creators, little creators. Like, if you guys know, sometimes they
little
slip
creator.
past us.
Have you seen my pot of comic books? Hey, ho.
That's an Irish accent. What?
I don't know what it is. It's offensive, probably.
Yeah, probably. Sometimes we miss them. If you guys know any Kickstarters, let us know. We always like checking them out. Massimo likes supporting them.
And I also like interviewing said people who are on Kickstarter.
And Massimo likes interviewing them.
Yeah.
He's our man on the street.
Yep. It's a fun time. But yeah, no, as we said, please leave a comment or leave a comment on this Facebook group, which you can find at BGCP Disassembled Podcast, or you can find us at BGCP Comic Con on Facebook and Twitter. We're going to plug these like crazy because we know for a fact that people love having their stuff read out on podcasts.
Yeah.
It's always good.
We'll say your words that you say to us back to you, and you're going to love it.
Love it, exactly.
But we will say the words wrong.
Yes.
They'll promise that they'll be correct.
Yep. Yeah, I might mispronounce it. If you have a funny name, I might mispronounce it. I'm sorry. I'm only as good as my country has made me, which is not very good at all. We should probably bring this to a close. I think this is a podcast.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It is. Yeah.
We'll be back next week with more talk about comic books and news and flying on the seat of our pants. But in the meantime, thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
I'm going to play the outro music now. I always forget to play the outro music. Like, it fades in. So I'm going to press it now, and it's going to take, 10 seconds.
The suspense.
Do you want me to have this, Dan edit this out?
Here it comes. There it is. Hell yeah. All right, bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Disassembled. You can find more news and reviews on BigGlasgowComicPage.com. And don't forget, you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube as BGCP Comic Con. Make sure you also subscribe on your podcast provider of choice for new episodes every week.